As promised in the video last night from Marvel Stadium, another walk and talk. Welcome along to Melbourne. Been here for a couple of days, had the First Nations and Pacifica game yesterday, so I'll have some more reflections on that, and we're building up to the second test. Can the Wallabies level up this series? How do they do that, and how important is it that they do that? Plus bits of team news as well. Lions, Joe McCarthy might be out. The Wallabies, how are they going to shuffle their pack? So a few things to do in this video and to talk about. Another walk and talk where in just a moment I'm going to be at the MCG, one of the world's great sporting venues where the second test is going to be on the weekend. So come with me, drop a comment down below, like the video as well, and subscribe to the channel. Give me your thoughts on Lions team selection, what you want to see, Wallabies team selection, what you want to see, and do you think the Wallabies are going to be able to level up this test series? My God, I think we need them too for the interest of the series. So let me know, comment down below, and come with me to the MCG. So I said in the video last night from Marvel that I thought it was the best tour game that we've had so far. I thought the way in which the First Nations and Pacifica 15 went about their business made it a brilliant game. They asked so many questions of the Lions, they got in their face, they made the breakdown difficult, they took them on at the set piece. And I do wonder whether there was an element of a blueprint for what the Wallabies could look to implement to try and cause them problems in the second test. I think the big thing in particular is the emotional side of the game. The Lions are the favourites for this series. It's not a huge shock that they won the first test, and it's not even a huge shock that they look like the better team. But emotion goes such a long way in rugby. Is that something that the Wallabies can use this weekend? And actually, upon reflection from the first test, was probably an area that personally I was quite disappointed in them from. They just didn't look almost ready for it, I thought. And a lot of it was to do with how good the Lions were, how physical they were, how dominant they were. Like, they were awesome. But from a Wallabies point of view, I've felt that it comes around once every 12 years. It's a Lions series at home. And they almost just looked a bit underwhelming to me. The other school of thought, and people that I think are a bit more positive about the Wallabies, is that look at the final scoreline, look at the second half, look at the final 20 minutes when they caused the Lions some proper problems, and maybe many of you will look at it in that kind of way and you'll say, do you know what, I think there's loads of positives here for the Lions, loads of reasons that you can look at the game and think, loads of positives for Australia and loads of reasons that you can look at the game and think that they are going to make a much better fight of it here in the second test. Because let me turn the camera around. And the MCG, so originally we got told about a year ago that it was going to be 100,000 people at the MCG. It's not a sellout, we're looking at between 85 and 90, still going to be an awesome occasion. And this place is just wicked. I know many of you won't have necessarily been before. If you ever get yourselves to Melbourne, get yourselves here, whether it's for the cricket. I've been to an AFL game here as well. It is just such a cool venue. I absolutely love it. I think it's still going to be a great occasion tomorrow night. And we'll see if we can find some of the statues as well. Shane Warne's statue over there and some of the legends of Aussie sport. So yeah, I guess it's a question of, are you glass half full or are you glass half empty? And I got a comment on the channel the other day of saying that I was a little bit glass half empty on this tour, which is a fair observation. I never intend to be. I try and call things how I see it and my experience being on the ground out here. Maybe my response to that is, has it been a bit of a glass half empty tour, just in that a lot of the tour games haven't caught a light. The first test, I personally didn't think the Wallabies were all that great. So do you have more hope for Australia in the second test? And I just think that emotional side of the game, like, I get that the Lions are arguably a better outfit and have more quality, but there's no excuse really for not bringing that emotional energy, and I think that can take you such a long way in rugby. It's kind of the unique thing to the sport, isn't it? I feel like the World Cup semi-final, England-South Africa, was a good example of that. The Springboks were a better team than England, but England came in with a really precise game plan that they executed really well and emotionally were so up for that physical battle. And it was a one-point game. South Africa ended up winning it deservedly. But I think you can really level the playing field with that. So give me your thoughts in terms of the First Nations, what you made of that and what the Wallabies can take out of it. So I was also down here at the stadium yesterday, and there are so many Lions fans coming for a tour here. So I'll do my bit for the Victoria Tourist Board. If you do get down here, you can do a tour of the MCG, and it's well worth doing. I've done it before. Elsewhere, should we talk about team news? So for Australia, Will Skelton and Rob Valentini could come back in. I still find it weird that if they were available for the first test, why you wouldn't play them. I know Joe Schmidt has said that if it was a test aside or a third test, they would have played, but I just think the first test is where you set your stall out, you make a statement, but they should come back in. I think that's really important, in particular for Valentini. I think what he brings to that back row. And what else do the Wallabies do? I've seen it said in some quarters in the Aussie media that with Joseph Suolihi, should they play him at 13? Because Len Ikitau and Suolihi are both 13s, and actually your star outside centre, the $5 million man, isn't getting enough of the ball at the moment. Do you put him to fullback? Which I'm not sure how I feel about, because I feel like Tom Wright is one of Australia's best players and most consistent performers, but in an effort to get Suolihi more of the ball, are you better off having him at 15 and somewhere he can affect the game more regularly? Which again goes back to, I suppose, the Israel Farrell comparisons from 2013, and you're playing someone in an area that they're just going to touch the ball a lot more. They're going to impact the game more. I don't think they're necessarily going to move things around, but it's food for thought. And then also Tate McDermott, who came off the bench, looked brilliant, lively, zip into the game. I feel like it would make more sense for him to start. Again, speaking to some of the Aussie journos out here, they're not expecting that to happen. But I feel like Tate McDermott is their most zippy, energy kind of injecting number 9. So I would rather see him start, but we'll see. I don't know if that is going to happen. How else can the Wallabies impact their team news and shift things around and play around with selection in a way that can give them an advantage or give them a better chance in the second test? Pete Samu, part of the team as well, back training with the squad. Probably not going to come in, I don't think, because Tazano is going to be on the bench, had a great Super Rugby season. Obviously, you've got Valentini coming back in, De Crepney, McGrath will play. So yeah, let's see. There are a few things that Joe Schmidt could do there, but what changes is he going to make to his team? Which brings me on to the Lions. So injury news for the Lions at the moment that is TBC. Joe McCarthy, question marks over. Mac Hansen, question marks over as well. Let's talk about the Joe McCarthy one, because I think that has the potential to have the biggest impact here for the Lions. He's been great all tour, partnered Maro Itoje in the first test. If McCarthy's out, what do? I think you want to keep your back row the same. So I don't think you move Byrne from 6 into the second row. I think you do a straight swap with Chesham, who was on the bench, and he partners Itoje in the second row. You keep Byrne and Curry in your back row, I think, because they were awesome in that first test. I know they weren't necessarily picked on form, but Jesus, they warranted selection. They were quality. But I think if you do that, you've then got 3 second rows in your starting team in Byrne, Chesham, Itoje. Therefore, does it open up a spot for Jack Morgan, for example, to come onto the bench? Or it could be a Van der Fleer, but I think Morgan is probably the next cab off the rank. They got such good options there. But given that Andy Farrell said he was this close to starting in the first test, could we see Morgan on the bench, along with Earl, for example? And then you've got a couple of back row options on your bench. Let me know actually what you make of that in the comments. I think that's going to be pretty interesting. Midfield, Gary Ringrose looks wicked off the bench. Hugh Jones I don't think has necessarily put a foot wrong, but as I've said in a few videos, I've always kind of had this gut instinct of Andy Farrell would like to play Ringrose, in which case would you bring in Aki, or actually are you fiddling with a part of the team that doesn't need to be touched if you do that? Because Tuipulotu and Jones did pretty well. They look pretty good. Do you need to change your midfield? And then there's the Owen Farrell question, the man who provokes a reaction. I know loads of you will say, why on earth would Owen Farrell be in part of the test team? And you would be justified in thinking that based upon rugby reasons. Owen Farrell played 80 minutes last night, and that's his first 80 minutes for what, months, I think? I can't remember exactly, but like a long, long time. So why 4 days later would you then put him into the test team? Well, one argument could be because of what happened in the final 20 minutes of the first test. When the Lions just lost control of things a little bit, someone of the experience and leadership that Farrell brings, that you put him onto the bench. I also think if he does go onto the bench, it just changes your options. So I think he'd replace Marcus Smith. You could just play around a bit with some of your backline options, I think, if he was there. I don't think it will necessarily happen, but I do think it is something that is a real possibility here, as much as many people will disagree with that. So what they do in the midfield, question mark. What they do in the kind of forwards and the back row replacements, I think a big question mark. Blair Kinghorn got through 80 minutes. So would he potentially come in at fullback? Mac Hansen, I think, is still also an injury doubt along with Joe McCarthy. So there's a few things there for the Lions. How much do you think Andy Farrell is going to shuffle his pack? Because they had such a good performance in the first test. They might be forced into a couple of changes, but I don't know if they're going to make as many changes as some people perhaps think they might do. Look, we'll wait and see. But that's kind of the injury news and the possible changes as far as I see it. Tell you what, let me just go over here. So MCG here that I've been walking around, and then I think we'll see it in the distance actually. Go this way. You've got Rod Laver Arena for tennis fans. Aussie Open just over here in the distance, which is probably going to be squint and you might be able to see it, but that's kind of over this way. And you have everywhere where the Aussie Open happens. Over here, one of the reasons that many people say Melbourne is Australia's sporting capital. And this place in particular is one of my favourite sporting venues. And hopefully we're going to get a great test match on Saturday. And we'll have more on that tomorrow because we'll have the team news from here in Melbourne. So I hope you enjoyed the latest walk and talk. Reflections from the First Nations and Pacifica game. Potential changes for the Wallabies. Potential changes for the Lions as we are gearing up to the second test. The City of Melbourne kind of through there. The MCG there. And we're loving life on the ground. Drop a comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I hope you've enjoyed the latest walk and talk from here in Melbourne. I'll see you in the next one.